of me, then
Do I have to
take
wait
it.
for the thumbs up?
See, right there you go. That's
You
the,
gave me the
that's the
thumbs up?
message. We're good.
Okay.
7 o'clock.
All right.
As soon as it gives you a thumbs up, you're on the air.
All right, good evening, everybody. I'd like to call to order the February meeting of the Tanzania Board of Education. Would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Here.
Mrs. Eckenrode?
Here.
Mr. Hardesty?
Here.
Mr. Packer?
Here.
Mr. Polenick?
Here.
Mrs. Tate?
Here.
Mr. Rainey?
Here.
Mrs. Smiley?
Here.
Mrs. Williams?
Here.
I am present. Mr. Johnston?
Here.
Mrs. Dolges?
Here.
Mrs. Eglin is excused. Mr. Grimaldi is excused. Mr. Dalton?
Here.
Mr. Gramley?
Here.
Mrs. Dalby?
Here.
Mrs. Sluppy?
Here.
Mr. Safran?
Here. Okay, thank you. Are there any presentations this evening?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Johnston, would you mind
Absolutely.
introducing our guest?
Absolutely. So this evening, I am with Dr. Matson, who's the Executive Director for Aaron IU, new to us, beginning of this year. I will have to say it has been an absolute pleasure working with her since she started this school year. Communication is outstanding. Support is outstanding. I will tell you that it even goes 24 hours a day, even on weekends. I've called, I've texted, and she responds back and has pulled superintendents together and is doing a remarkable job. So she asked if she could come and spend a meeting with us. So we're giving her that privilege tonight, and we're glad you're here. And any other time you want to come, you're welcome to be here. So I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thank you. That's very kind words, and I just really appreciate the opportunity to be here. I do see some familiar faces here this evening, so it's nice to see you again. We had several members attend a new board member training, and that was a real pleasure to get to know you a little bit through that. Just to talk a little bit, and I will be very brief here, but I think a lot of times when we're in education, we don't always realize exactly what an intermediate unit is, why it exists, and what all it does do. We might know a piece of what it does, but not the whole picture. So the state of Pennsylvania, there's 29 intermediate units and 500 school districts. Those 29 intermediate units each cover a region. We are IU 28. We cover Armstrong and Indiana County. Just so happens that it's a pretty clean cut with the two counties. Not all intermediate units are that way. Sometimes they cover partial counties. Sometimes they cover more than 2 counties, 3 counties, 4 counties. It just depends on how the maps were drawn. And really the idea is to provide cost-effective services to schools. We service all 11 school districts and the 2 CTC schools in that region, as well as the non-public schools. Some of our departments, we have family and community education. With that, we have adult education, where we help students that are coming back as returning adults to get their GED. We help with homeless. We actually are a regional coordinator that goes even beyond our IU for homeless. We cover a large part of western Pennsylvania. We have foster family supports, and we go into about 70 homes within the 2 counties for young families that are new to parenting, and we do Parents as Teacher curriculum. So those are some of the main focuses of that department. We have a full special education and pupil service department where we run multi-district classrooms. Autism support, emotional support, life skills support, where many districts will send kids to that one district. We staff it. We actually have an emotional support district in this, our support classroom in your district here. We offer full related services, school psychology, speech therapy, vision, hearing, PT, OT, those kinds of things for some of those low incidence services that students might need. We also have a full business office that we provide, you know, kind of some of the back office work if that's needed for a district. We do grant management helps do some of the reporting for that, do some of the grant writing at times. We'll do payroll for districts if they ever need support in that as a backup, or if, there's a transition in the district. Really anything that they may be needing some support with those back-end office jobs. Also, same thing with human resource. A lot of our small districts don't have their own human resource administrator, so we would offer consultation services there as well. Same with technology support, both on the hardware end and the software end, if districts need that. And then last but not least, one of my passions, we have a full curriculum department where we do professional development for teachers, administrators, and also board members if that's something that's needed. So really anything the districts are needing to move the learning forward in their schools, we will do our best to learn that ourselves and turn that around for your teachers, for your administrators. Moving forward, some goals that we have. One big thing we've been focusing on, as educators, we talk a lot about the art of teaching children, which is pedagogy. At the IU, we talk a lot about the art of teaching adults, which is andragogy, and we've been bringing in some consultants to help our consultants at the IU learn andragogy, learn that art of teaching adults and some of those strategies that, make it a little more palatable for adult learners to honor maybe that 25 years of experience they're coming in with, so that it's received well, they're an active participant in the learning, and they're able to kind of take that and make meaning out of that for themselves. Also, just really looking to help districts with career opportunities for their students, career-based learning, supporting guidance counselors as well as teachers with not only, career pathways, aligning coursework, looking at some of those industry-based credentialing, looking at some of those work-based learning experiences, virtual career symposium, and also supports for families as well. How do they help their children through some of that post-secondary planning? So some things that we'd like to do a little more with moving forward. We do have some strong relationships here in Indiana County. It's definitely my mission to continue and strengthen those relationships. And I just really do appreciate the opportunity, again, like I said, to highlight some of the things that the intermediate unit does, to meet all of you, and please know we're always a resource for you. I will be here after the meeting if you have any particular questions. I'd be happy to talk to anybody, so thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Any questions for Dr. Matson at this point?
Thank you, Dr. Matson. Okay, item number 4, approval of the agenda. Can we have a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make that motion.
A second.
Any questions or discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carries. And at this time, the board will hear citizens' remarks. We do have individual, Grace Pierce, and Grace lives in Clymer and is a parent.
All right, thanks for
Sure.
I was hoping that I could ask a couple questions first. Who rates the superintendent?
Who rates the
Who rates,
superintendent?
yeah,
The board rates the superintendent.
just the board?
Just the board.
Okay. And is there a higher rating than proficient?
No, there's not a higher rating than proficient.
That's set by state.
Okay.
If I may, Mr. Packer, we have the, excuse me, when we do it, Ms. Pierce, Peace, I'm sorry, we go from unsatisfactory, needs improvement, satisfactory, very competent, and outstanding. The state just requires just
Satisfactory or
proficient. Satisfactory or unsatisfactory, is that?
Yes.
So we try to take it a little better than what the state does. Proficient or satisfactory just doesn't sound good, does it?
It doesn't.
Yeah.
That's why I was going to say, if there was other people who could be rating to get the rating higher, because I really think Mr. Johnson does above proficient. So I just wanted to acknowledge that I think he is doing a super job, and whatever word would be more than proficient. So, that's all I wanted to say.
Well, thank you, Grace.
I have a yearly spiel, you'll hear in just a little bit.
Grace, I saw Mr. Johnson slip you a 10 before the meeting. Now, I should just comment, because as a board, we've had those same questions, because proficient just doesn't sound enough. And Mr. Hardesty, John chairs our Act 93 committee that's responsible for the superintendent's evaluation, and John has said that many times too. So thank you for coming tonight and sharing your thoughts. Okay, the minutes were included in your packet. Can we have a motion to approve the minutes?
Satisfactory or unsatisfactory?
Motion.
I'll second.
Are there any questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carries. The business report is also included in your packet. Can we have a motion to approve the financial report?
I'll make the motion. I'll second.
Are there any questions? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Williams?
Yes.
Mrs. Tate?
Yes.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode?
Yes.
Mr. Hardesty?
Yes.
Mrs. Smiley?
Yes.
Mr. Rainey?
Yes.
Mr. Packer?
Yes.
Mr. Polenick?
Yes.
Motion by Mrs. Eckenrode, second by Mrs. Williams. Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. The presentation of bills, they are also included in your packet. The general fund has bills totaling $230,906.12, and that's for the 2021-22 school year. Can we have a motion to authorize payment of the bills?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Are there any questions? Roll call?
Mrs. Williams?
Yes.
Mrs. Tate?
Yes.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode?
Yes.
Mr. Hardesty?
Yes.
Mrs. Smiley?
Yes.
Mr. Rainey?
Yes.
Mr. Packer?
Yes.
Mr. Polenick?
Yes.
Motion by Mrs. Tate, second by Mrs. Dalton. Motion carries.
All right, are there any program updates this evening?
There are none.
Okay, that takes us to our reports, beginning with the superintendent report. Mr. Johnston.
Sure, thanks. Just want to remind you of some of the items on the agenda this evening and some details with those. Asking you under curriculum to approve our 22-23 school year school calendar. First teacher day would be August 22nd, and first student day will be August 25th, with your approval this evening. Also asking for your approval to approve the Aaron IU 28 general operating budget of $3,323,887. Penns Manor's share under that local contribution for the general operating budget, our cost would be $22,592. That is a decrease by $51, and again, that's the formula that's used when calculating our share over the membership within the IU. Also, under athletics this evening, asking for your permission to hire Mr. Zajac as the head junior high football coach, asking your approval to approve Mr. Griffin as our assistant junior high football assistant coach 1. Also asking you to accept the resignation, giving us permission to post and advertise the resignation from Mrs. Kazemchek as girls assistant coach 2 for track and field. Also asking you to approve a couple of spring sports volunteers in track and field, Megan Schwartz, baseball, Jimmy Smith, Josh Detweiler, and Mark Matko. Also asking for you to approve the increase by $5 for stipends for sports officials in the following areas: varsity football, varsity basketball, varsity baseball, and varsity softball. Also asking you to approve 4 substitute drivers under transportation. Under technology committee, asking you to allow us to go through the E-rate process to purchase switches and licenses, as we talked about last week. Just reminding you that when that bid does come in, that 80% of the cost would be reimbursed to us through the E-rate process. Under new business, we're asking for you to hire Mr. Eric Smith as an instructional assistant. Mr. Smith will be replacing Mrs. Kirsch, who has recently resigned and retired. Asking you to approve a guest teacher this evening. Also asking permission to allow us to post for our extended school year that will take place this summer, along with our elementary summer learning loss camp. A couple other items I did mention last week and didn't get clarification. Unless you object, we will have on the March agenda to approve the majorette group going to Wildwood. It would be no cost to the district. That's what I was waiting on getting a response back. So unless someone objects, I'm going to administratively approve, and then you can officially approve it next month. I'm not sure if anybody objects to that. No cost to the district. Students would be out April 28th and 29th. Anybody object to that? Okay. Also coming up February 21st is our Act 80 Day. Students will be home. All employees will be here. Also encourage everyone to attend the Heritage Championship game this Friday. That is at KCAC. Our girls will be in the championship game starting at 6 p.m. Also, will be 2 of our students awarded scholarships in between the girls and boys game. Just to update you, we are in our second round interviews for the elementary art teacher, and shortly, coming up from February 21st on, as we put the budget together, I'll be contacting Budget and Finance Committee for us to roll up our sleeves and get to work on our budget. That's all I have, Mr. Packer.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Doss. Is there anything else to report?
There are none.
Any old business? No old business? Okay, Mrs. Eckenrode, no negotiations.
Nothing tonight, Mr. Packer.
Okay, thank you. And Mrs. Williams?
I have one item
Curriculum?
tonight. Approve the 2022-23 school calendar. I'd like to make a motion to approve the school calendar for the 2022-23 school year as presented, with the first teacher day being August 22nd, 2022. The first student day is August 25th, 2022. A tentative last student day is May 31st, 2023. And the last teacher day is June 1st, 2023. I'll second.
Questions? Roll call?
Mrs. Williams?
Yes.
Mrs. Tate?
Yes.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode?
Yes.
Mr. Hardesty?
Yes.
Mrs. Smiley?
Yes.
Mr. Rainey?
Yes.
Mr. Packer?
Yes.
Mr. Polenick?
Yes.
Motion by Mrs. Williams, second by Mrs. Tate. Motion carries.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Williams. Budget and Finance, Mrs. Tate?
Yes, one item tonight, approve ARNIU 28 general operation budget. I would like to make the motion to approve the ARNIU 28 general operating budget as presented for the fiscal year July 1st, 2022 to June 30, 2023, in the amount of $3,323,887, with the district share being $22,592.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Okay, roll call?
Mrs. Williams?
Yes.
Mrs. Tate?
Yes.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode?
Yes.
Mr. Hardesty?
Should I do it, Jill?
Yes.
Yes.
Mrs. Smiley?
Yes.
Mr. Rainey?
Yes.
Mr. Packer?
Yes.
Mr. Polenick?
Yes.
Motion by Mrs. Tate, second by Mrs. Smiley. Motion carries.
That's all I have tonight, Mr. Packer.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Tate. Mr. Rainey, nothing tonight under Buildings and Grounds?
That's correct, Mr. Packer, nothing tonight.
Okay, thank you. And then Mrs. Dalton, Athletic Committee?
Yes, Mr. Packer, I have 5.
16A, hire head junior high football coach. I make a motion to hire Mr. Christopher Zajac as a head junior high football coach pending all clearances and requiring training at the salary of $4,068.44 as per the current collective bargaining agreement between the Penns Manor Area School District and the Penns Manor Education Associated dated August 1st, 2019 to July 31st, 2022.
I'll second.
Questions? Roll call?
Mrs. Williams?
Yes.
Mrs. Tate?
Yes.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode?
Yes.
Mr. Hardesty?
Yes.
Mrs. Smiley?
Yes.
Mr. Rainey?
Yes.
Mr. Packer?
Yes.
Mr. Polenick?
Yes.
Motion by Mrs. Dalton, second by Mrs. Eckenrode, motion carries.
I have 16B, hire assistant junior high football coach. 1, I make a motion to hire Mr. Kirby Griffith as assistant junior high football coach. 1, pending all clearances and required training at the salary of $3,559.88 as per the current collective bargaining agreement between the Penns Manor Area School District and the Penns Manor Education Associated dated August 1st, 2019 to July 31st, 2022.
Second?
Questions? Roll call?
Mrs. Williams?
Yes.
Mrs. Tate?
Yes.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode?
Yes.
Mr. Hardesty?
Yes.
Mrs. Smiley?
Yes.
Mr. Rainey?
Yes.
Mr. Packer?
Yes.
Mr. Polenick?
Yes.
Motion by Mrs. Dalton, second by Mr. Hardesty, motion carries.
I have 16C, accept the resignation of girls assistant coach 2. I make the motion to accept the resignation of Miss Kristen Kazimchak as the girls track and field assistant coach 2 and to grant the administration permission to post and advertise this position.
Second.
Questions? Roll call?
Mrs. Williams?
Yes.
Mrs. Tate?
Yes.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode?
Yes.
Mr. Hardesty?
Yes.
Mrs. Smiley?
Yes.
Mr. Rainey?
Yes.
Mr. Packer?
Yes.
Mr. Polenick?
Yes.
Motion by Mrs. Dalton, second by Mrs. Eckenrode, motion carries.
I have 16D, approve spring volunteers. I make a motion to approve the following sports volunteers for the 2021-2022 school year, pending the receipt of all current clearances, cardio, and impact testing, and the coaching education courses as required by PIAA.
Second.
Questions? Roll call?
Mrs. Williams?
Yes.
Mrs. Tate?
Yes.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode?
Yes.
Mr. Hardesty?
Yes.
Mrs. Smiley?
Yes.
Mr. Rainey?
Yes.
Mr. Packer?
Yes.
Mr. Polenick?
Yes.
Motion by Mrs. Dalton, second by Mrs. Tate.
Do you need me to read the names?
Yes, she did.
Okay.
That's just what I was asking.
Okay. Track and field, Megan Schwartz. Baseball, Jimmy Smith, Josh Detweiler, and Mark Matko.
Thank you.
Okay. 16E, approved stipend for sports officials. I make a motion to increase the following sports official stipend by $5. Varsity football official stipend, $65. Varsity basketball official stipend, $60. Varsity baseball official stipend, $60. And varsity softball official, $60. Sorry.
Do you have a second?
I'll second.
Questions? Roll call?
Mrs. Williams?
Yes.
Mrs. Tate?
Yes.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode?
Yes.
Mr. Hardesty?
Yes.
Mrs. Smiley?
Yes.
Mr. Rainey?
Yes.
Mr. Packer?
Yes.
Mr. Polenick?
Yes.
Motion by Mrs. Dalton, second by Mrs. Smiley, motion carries.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Dalton.
Thank you, Ms. Smith.
Transportation Committee, Mrs. Smiley.
And to approve drivers for the 2021-2022 school year, I'd like to make a motion to approve the following bus drivers and substitutes for Tri-County Transportation for the 2021-2022 school year. April Clark, Benjamin Lamer, Brandon Ledig, and Stephen Ashers.
Second?
Questions? Roll call?
Mrs. Williams?
Yes.
Mrs. Tate?
Yes.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode?
Yes.
Mr. Hardesty?
Yes.
Mrs. Smiley?
Yes.
Mr. Rainey?
Yes.
Mr. Packer?
Yes.
Mr. Polenick?
Yes.
Motion by Mrs. Smiley, second by Mr. Hardesty. Motion carries.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Smiley. Technology and Special Project Committee, Mr. Polenick.
Okay, I have one item, Mr. Packer. Authorized bid for switches and licensing. I'd like to make the motion to authorize administration to request proposals for 5 MS210 48 FP switches, 107 Meraki MRAP 5-year licenses, and 5 MS210 5-year licenses through the E-rate process. Release of the RFP is February 11th, 2022. Proposals are due by 1 p.m. on March 4th, 2022. Proposals will be opened at 1:15 p.m. on March 4, 2022. The administration is also authorized to evaluate the proposals using the E-rate process and make an RFP decision on March 16th, 2022. The district reserves the right to reject any and all proposals.
Second.
Questions? Roll call?
Mrs. Williams?
Yes.
Mrs. Tate?
Yes.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode?
Yes.
Mr. Hardesty?
Yes.
Mrs. Smiley?
Yes.
Mr. Rainey?
Yes.
Mr. Packer?
Yes.
Mr. Polenick?
Yes.
Motion by Mr. Polenick, second by Mrs. Williams. Motion carries.
That's all I have, Mr. Packer.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Polenick. Okay, nothing under policies or correspondence? Correct. Okay, we'll move on with new business. 21A, hire instructional assistant. Can we have a motion to hire Mr. Eric Smith as a 7.58 hour a day instructional assistant effective Monday, February 14, 2022 at the contracted rate of $9 per hour for the first 60 work days and $10.60 per hour thereafter, as per the current contract between the district and the Pennsylvania Area Education Support Associated, dated July 1, 2020 through June 30, 2024. We have a motion.
Second.
Questions? Roll call?
Mrs. Williams?
Yes.
Mrs. Tate?
Yes.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode?
Yes.
Mr. Hardesty?
Yes.
Mrs. Smiley?
Yes.
Mr. Rainey?
Yes.
Mr. Packer?
Yes.
Mr. Polenick?
Yes.
Motion by Mrs. Eckenrode, second by Mrs. Tate. Motion carries.
Okay, 21, be approved guest teacher. Can we have a motion to approve Amy Trimble as the guest teacher pending receipt of all guest teacher certifications from the IU and the 2021-20, or for the 2021-22 school year?
Motion.
Second.
Questions? Roll call?
Mrs. Williams?
Yes.
Mrs. Tate?
Yes.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode?
Yes.
Mr. Hardesty?
Yes.
Mrs. Smiley?
Yes.
Mr. Rainey?
Yes.
Mr. Packer?
Yes.
Mr. Polenick?
Yes.
Motion by Mr. Rainey, second by Mrs. Williams. Motion carries.
Okay, 21C, approve superintendent evaluation for 2021. Can we have a motion to approve the 2021 superintendent evaluation of Mr. Darren Johnston with an overall proficient rating of the performance standards for the 2021 calendar year? The school board directors, as part of the Pennsylvania School Code, will publish a statement on the district's website indicating satisfactory performance for 2021.
Motion.
I'll second it.
Questions?
I'd like to say a few words, if I may, Mr. Packer. Just for everyone to know, we do have a set evaluation for all board members. We had, out of 9, we had 8. One recused himself because not on the board a good while. We have a total of 40 questions in 8 categories: educational programming and planning, relationships with the school board, personnel, business and financial management, community relations, individual characteristics, job-related characteristics, and school climate. We take that and we come up with an average per individual board member, and then also the super, Mr. Johnston, will rate himself also. The 2021 year, the board average was 4.48. As I said earlier, the ratings that we have, I know it's hard to believe we're not agreeing with the school code of satisfactory or unsatisfactory. We do have a rating of 1. If a board member said 1, that's unsatisfactory. The superintendent's performance in this category is unacceptable and requires immediate attention. Number 2, needs improvement. The superintendent needs to concentrate self-improvement efforts in this area. Number 3, satisfactory. The superintendent meets expectations. Very competent. The superintendent exceeds the expectations of his job description. And number 5, the superintendent excels in this category. Mr. Johnston was rated by the board in late December, early January, and received a 4.48 rating. And so I encourage us to accept our own rating and move forward for another good year, Mr. Johnston.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Appreciate the feedback.
Thank you, Mr.
Oh, yes.
And thank you, Mrs. Pease, for coming. I didn't. Thank you.
Is it only 10? Also, I need to point out that we also ask for comments on each of those. So a lot of board members do make comments. Mr. Johnston, those are shared with him. And Mr. Johnston rates himself and comes up with yearly goals in each of those categories. So it's a pretty comprehensive thing. And it's the same year by year and the same questions. So it's a good gauge of Mr. Johnston and the district. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Hardesty. Any more discussion? Okay, roll call.
Mrs. Williams?
Yes.
Mrs. Tate?
Yes.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode?
Yes.
Mr. Hardesty?
Yeah.
Mrs. Smiley?
Yes.
Mr. Rainey?
Yes.
Mr. Packer?
Yes.
Mr. Polenick?
Yes.
Motion by Mr. Rainey, second by Mrs. Dalton, motion carries.
Okay, 21D, permission to grant the posting for extended school year and elementary summer learning loss camp. Can we have a motion to grant administration permission to post for teachers and staff members to operate our extended school year program and our elementary summer learning loss camp for the summer of 2022?
Make the motion.
I'll second.
Any questions? Roll call?
Mrs. Williams?
Yes.
Mrs. Tate?
Yes.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode?
Yes.
Mr. Hardesty?
Yes.
Mrs. Smiley?
Yes.
Mr. Rainey?
Yes.
Mr. Packer?
Yes.
Mr. Polenick?
Yes.
Motion by Mrs. Williams, second by Mrs. Tate, motion carries.
Okay, 21E, student recognition. We have a number of students that we need to recognize this evening. PMA Student of the Month for February is Ellison Johnson. The following FBLA members placed first in the region and will advance to states: Morgan Hill, Riley Hill, Ellison Johnson, Noah Cohen, Maddie Martin, Tony Rizzo, Alicia Shank, Greta Rattay, and Sabrina Smith. The following FBLA members placed second in their region and will advance to states: Alicia Altimus, Kyra Brady, Bree Carnahan, Cameron Kuster, Summer Fennell, Grant Grimaldi, Alec Johnson, Brian Coaches, Olivia Cohen, Lily Orr, Luke Rainey, Isabella Wenzel, and Matt Zajac. And the following FBLA members placed third in the region and were also advanced to the states: Liz Dell, Kathleen Dixon, Kendra Fairman, Ty Fennell, Maggie Hill, Breezy Horn, Caleb Joyner, Anna Scatina,
Correct.
Rox Leppy, Ellison Steitler, Sarah Steitler, and Kenzie Wilson. Additional regional winners placing in the top 5 in their events were Isaac Barnhart, Leah Dunmeyer, Amara Hemphill, Bailey Horn, Connor James, Dylan Konzumchak, Eamon Lieb, Sarah Nichols, and Alex Blenig. And also like to congratulate Luke Rainey and Anna Buggy, who qualified to advance to the state level competition for the Pennsylvania School Press Association Journalism Competition. Luke will compete in the new sports writing category, and Anna will compete in the broadcast journalism writing category. And the following students were chosen and represented Penns Manor at the annual PMEA District Band Festival held at the Kovalchik Center on January 28th. And it was Allison Antonio, Morgan Hill, and Bailey Horn, and Allison Johnson. We've had a lot of kids that we recognize this evening, and that's nice to be able to do that. And just so everybody knows, each one of these kids get a certificate and a letter from both Darren and myself. Yeah, yes, Mr.
I just want to remind everybody what a great job our students do on Indiana in the Morning, the second Tuesday of the month. Mrs. Dolges and Mrs. Zaglin usually have, they're both there, or one of them takes, and just this, and you can also go on Facebook and see it. This morning, 2 4th graders, their goal in life is to be NBA players, and I think in 4th grade that's a worthy goal, and they spoke well. And then we had our KDKA hometown high Q there, and 3 wonderful individuals there. So we're going from NBA players to a possible politician and a lawyer, but they always do such a great job, and I just encourage you, because I know you guys got to struggle sometimes to get the right mix, and it's really worth doing. And used to, you just had to watch or listen to it on the radio, but now you can find it on what's that called? YouTube. Yeah.
Agreed.
That's it.
It's nice to be able to recognize kids.
Yeah.
You're right.
Mr. Packer, if I could too. So the KDKA football or high Q team will be on again 11:30 this weekend, just to remind everybody of that. So they were on last week at 11. They're on again this weekend 11:30. Same, it's a rerun, same competition, but just to let people know they missed it.
All right. Okay. Request for field trips or conferences. Can we have a motion to approve the field trips and conferences presented?
I'll make the motion. I'll second.
Questions? Roll call.
Mrs. Williams?
Yes.
Mrs. Tate?
Yes.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode?
Yes.
Mr. Hardesty?
Yes.
Mrs. Smiley?
Yes.
Mr. Rainey?
Yes.
Mr. Packer?
Yes.
Mr. Polanic?
Yes.
Motion by Mrs. Eckenrode, second by Mrs. Tate. Motion carries.
Okay, before we adjourn, I wonder if I could get the special project committee just to meet in Darren's office for 5-10 minutes right after tonight's meeting. No longer than that. Okay, is there any other business that needs to be brought before this board this evening? Okay, our next committee meeting is March the 2nd at 7 p.m. and the business meeting March the 9th at 7 p.m. Okay, thank you all, and this meeting is adjourned. Thanks.